Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the incredibly ruthless, high-stakes early days of the Han Dynasty. We're going to look at the historical records to see exactly how two distant royal relatives of the emperor managed to claw their way to absolute power. And the wildest part? They achieved this using completely, fundamentally opposite strategies. We've got a warrior who literally bled for his crown and a politician who schemed in the shadows for his.
So, to kick things off, I want you to ask yourself a question. In a brand new, incredibly unstable empire, what's actually the best way to secure a crown? Do you take it with a sword, putting your life on the line on the battlefield? Or do you buy it with a well-placed bribe, navigating the incredibly deadly halls of court politics? Keep that in the back of your mind as we unpack these two completely different paths to power. Moving into Section 1, Bloodlines and Broken Empires. Right, let's set the stage here. Emperor Zu has just conquered the entire realm. But as any historian knows, conquering an empire and actually holding on to it, those are two very different games. To stabilize this fragile new dynasty, the emperor realizes he has absolutely no choice but to rely on his own bloodline to keep control.
To really understand our two main guys, we've got to wrap our heads around this crucial concept of vassal kings. See, Gaozu's immediate family, his own sons and brothers, they were mostly super young and there just weren't enough of them. They definitely weren't ready to rule. So he had to tap his distant relatives. He handed them these semi-autonomous kingdoms to act as fiercely loyal buffers against internal rebellions and outside threats. They were essentially highly privileged human shields scattered strategically across the map.
Which brings us to Section 2. Liu Jia, the warrior king. He represents the first path to power. This is a man who built his legacy entirely in the mud, the sweat, and the blood of the battlefield. He fought shoulder to shoulder with Emperor Zu to literally pacify the land. Let's look at his resume, because Liu Jia earned his crown the unbelievably hard way. Back when the empire was still up for grabs, he served as a general and locked down the Guantrong region. But his crowning military achievement? This absolutely daring raid. He led 20,000 men and hundreds of cavalry right across the Baima Ford, deep into enemy territory. His mission was to burn the accumulated food supplies of the rival warlord, Xiang Yu. And it was a brilliant move. It completely starved out the enemy, crippled Xiang Yu's operations, and directly paved the way for the massive ultimate victory at Gaizha. On top of that, he also secured the vital Nan Commandery. The guy was just indispensable. Because of that unshakable loyalty and undeniable battlefield merit, Gaozu rewarded him massively. The magic number you need to remember here is 52. He granted Liu Jia the kingdom of Jing, which was this huge, wealthy territory made up of 52 cities east of the Huai River. He was basically the anchor placed there to specifically shield the empire's eastern flank.
But the warrior's path is notoriously short. Liu Jia's reign ended almost exactly how it began, in total war. When the king of Huainan, Qing Bu, launched a massive rebellion against the Han Dynasty, Liu Jia didn't hesitate. He rode right out to defend his territory. Tragically, he engaged the rebel forces, suffered a defeat, had to flee, and was ultimately killed in action. He died defending the exact same empire he had bled to build.
Now, this sets up just a fascinating contrast with our second royal relative. While Liu Jia relied on pure military merit, was the ultimate loyal soldier, and went down swinging on the battlefield, our next subject, Liu Ze, took a completely different, basically bloodless route to his crown. He was the ultimate political maneuverer, a cunning survivor who relied entirely on backroom plots. All right, Section 3, Liu Ze, the master politician. So Liu Ze actually started out as a marquis with some military experience, but the whole political landscape just flipped upside down when Emperor Gaozu died and the notoriously terrifying Empress Dowager Lu took the reins. She was infamous for ruthlessly purging the Lu family to elevate her own Lu clan. Liu Ze knew his sword wouldn't do him any good here. He needed a brilliant, razor-sharp strategy just to survive her purchase.
And that brings us to this enormous, desperate bribe. Liu Ze took 200 jin, that's 200 caddies of solid gold, and just handed the entire fortune to a brilliant but totally broke wandering strategist from Qi named Tian Sheng. Think about that. Liu Ze didn't hire an army. He invested everything into a single, silver-tongued strategist to secure his future.
Which leads us to Section 4, Anatomy of a Royal Bribe. Because what Tian Sheng actually does with that gold is nothing short of a political masterclass.
Let's break down how this scheme unfolded.
Qian Sheng takes that mountain of gold all the way to the capital, Chang'an. He rents this massive mansion and throws an incredibly lavish banquet for the Empress Dowager's absolute favorite head eunuch, a guy named Zhang Ziqing. During this crazy party, Qian Sheng pulls off a massive psychological play. He convinces the eunuch that his life is actually in extreme danger because the Empress wants to crown kings from her own Lu family, but the ministers are pushing back. Qian advises the eunuch to step in and convince the ministers to agree to it. It actually works, and the Empress is so thrilled she rewards the eunuch with 1,000 jin of gold. But here's the kicker. Qian refuses his half of the cut. Instead, he uses that massive leverage to ask the eunuch for one little favor: convince the Empress to crown Liu Ze as King of Langya. His logic? Giving Ze a crown would quote-unquote appease the angry Lu families and make her own family's power grab look totally legitimate. And incredibly, she buys it.
But high-stakes court politics, it is insanely volatile. Literally, the moment the crown of Langya was granted, Qian Sheng rushed to Liu Ze with a frantic warning: flee immediately, do not stay. And thank goodness he listened. Right after Liu Ze bolted out the dates, the Empress completely changed her mind and sent men to stop him. But he was already gone, safely beyond the pass and on his way to his new kingdom. He survived by the absolute skin of his teeth.
And his opportunism didn't stop there. Just look at what he did the second Empress Dowager Lu finally died. The whole empire erupts, the Lu family starts violently purging the Lu clan, and Liu Ze immediately capitalizes. He leads troops, secures the western border at Liang, and then just speeds his forces straight to the capital to lock in his political influence. He positioned himself absolutely perfectly to help crown the new Emperor Wen. And for that quick thinking and crucial political backing, Emperor Wen bumped him up and promoted him to the highly prestigious King of Yan.
Jumping into Section 5, a legacy destroyed by scandal. So, against all odds, Liu Ze actually survived the deadliest political era of the early Han dynasty. He secured a massive kingdom for his heirs. Mission accomplished, right? Well, tragically, while he could outsmart rival warlords and ruthless empresses, he could not protect his legacy from his own family's total moral collapse.
Tracking this timeline, the descent into absolute scandal is remarkably fast. Liu Ze ruled Yan for barely 2 years before he died, passing the crown to his son. But it's his grandson, Liu Dingguo, who completely destroys the whole thing. Dingguo commits these heinous, unspeakable crimes of incest right inside his own family. And when a local magistrate from Feiru threatened to expose it, Dingguo literally had the guy murdered to cover it up. But the truth always finds a way out. By the first year of the Yuan Shuo era, the victims' brothers traveled straight to the capital and reported Dingguo directly to the emperor.
The Han Dynasty ministers who investigated this were utterly appalled. They officially declared that Dingguo behaved like a beast, disrupted basic human relations, and defied heaven itself. They demanded his execution, and the emperor signed off on it. Dingguo was forced to commit suicide, and the glorious kingdom of Yan, this exact same kingdom that Liu Ze had spent his entire life scheming, bribing, and risking his life to build, was completely abolished. It was downgraded to a mere commandery. Gone.
Now, Section 6, the historian's final verdict. This brings us right to the reflections of the legendary grand historian Sima Qian. He recorded all of this, and he offered his own brilliant perspective on the wildly divergent paths of these two incredibly different men, who really shared nothing but a last name.
Sima Qian makes a really insightful point here. He notes that while Liu Jia was placed purely as a loyal geographical shield for the empire's rivers and borders, Liu Ze was a sheer opportunist who totally exploited the terrifying power dynamics of the Liu clan. But Sima Qian actually concedes that despite the really shady backroom methods, Liu Ze's ability to maneuver and keep a kingdom afloat for 3 generations under such perilous, completely life-threatening circumstances, it's genuinely a staggering historical feat. So I'm going to leave you with a provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. We just watched 2 completely different paths to a crown. One was won by shedding blood on the front lines, the other by slipping gold in the shadows. But considering how incredibly transient and fleeting their power was, and the ultimate tragic collapse of both their family lines, was the brutal, ruthless game of dynastic ambition actually worth the cost? Thanks so much for exploring this wild slice of history with me.